All right, welcome to the Hybrid Ops podcast. It's episode 2. And in this podcast, there's a few different things that I'll be doing. Number 1, of course, I'll have a lot of guests that will come on. Multitude of backgrounds, from anything from thought leaders to game changers to business entrepreneurs, small business owners, leaders that are just in each individual category of their particular field. And then just very interesting people. But also, I'll have solo processes where I'll go through a solo series, one on leadership and one specific on business. And each one will be categorized when it comes to the podcast and what that looks like. So today is a solo leadership. And I'm going to dive in pretty deep on some leadership understanding. There's so much information out there. And the fact is that you can't lead anyone the exact same way. It's an individual and personalized approach when it comes to leadership. But what I can share with you is after 2 decades of leading thousands of people, there are some commonalities. There are some basic principles that you can put into place. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. And then I'm going to share the difference between leadership and personal and emotional connection. So the first place that I want to start with, what does it mean to be selfless? Many times that's this pious or altruistic approach to life where we think we have to be so completely just meek, and that our approach in life must be one to where you won't even hurt a blade of grass. And truly, to be selfless, it's a daily fight. And you have to give in to yourself, and you have to understand that as a human being, emotions and feelings and a multitude of things control your outlook. You're a being that has a very subjective reality that is connected to your traditions, your past, your histories, your upbringing, even the influences around you in any given moment. Your day can be shifted simply by something happening to you, whether it's at work, on your way to work, you're in traffic, you get bad news for the day. And these things can be so small, and yet they become monumental, especially when they add up over time. So the first thing that you have to do, if you want to be a selfless leader, or the term that's thrown out there so much, is a servant leader. If you're going to be a servant leader, what does it mean to serve? Well, a servant leader doesn't mean that you say the right catchphrases. It's not, I'm following this process, I have a strong emotional intelligence, I'm empathizing, I have all these characteristics and these values that I've created. It goes way beyond that. It is a daily action and daily work to truly learn how to live life through other people's eyes. I'll share that just from my own journey. Early on, as a single unit leader, leading about 300-400 people, and about a $50 to $60 million a year business, I had really thought that I had accomplished the things that leadership is about, success is about. You should be number one in everything. Again, I'm a young leader, and that's really where I wanted to focus. I'm working for a company that, of course, had an incredible foundation when it comes to culture. Put a lot of emphasis on making sure that you were a servant leader and really walk the walk. But at the same time, it was a business. So driving sales was, of course, extremely important. We had a multitude of other areas that we measured. And some of that would be merchandising. Some of it was atmosphere. What kind of sensory can you create? Whether that's visual, smell. And in this particular arena was a supermarket retail industry. So we wanted to create magic. We wanted the consumer to be able to come in and immerse themselves into a multitude of different things. If you go into one department, maybe you're transformed and you're taken to a small shop in Vienna, or you go to the bakery and you really believe that you're in Brussels because of the aroma, the smell, the taste, and all the unique details in the products that we created. And then there was an element through that you had to build on to create this sensory and this atmospheric. So when it comes to visual, it's about artistic merchandising. And to truly understand what artistic merchandising is about, then it's understanding human psychology. You look at it from the point of why do we buy what we buy? What creates impulse in us? How do you trigger the memory through sensory and smell? There's a multitude of different variables that go into merchandising. And obviously, being an incredible planner is very important. Understanding a great ideal of geometry and math so that you're able to lay your foundation. You have structural integrity and a multitude of other areas. Color breaks, segmentation, color flow, color phasing. There's the line of sight, exposure, different angles you can create when a consumer comes around a corner. What is the focal point that you want them to see? And there's a multitude of things that go into this. With that stated, whether it was financials, whether it was merchandising, being able to lead, being able to teach, I had achieved number one across the board. We had merchandising contest that you would come into the store and we would spend 2, 3, 4 days getting ready for these things. And that type of emphasis to be put on driving a business and planning and execution and getting your team behind it, it takes a lot of belief in each other. It takes a lot of planning. You detail out an overall 50,000 square foot space of how you're going to be able to execute this. You look at all the multitudes of the product you're going to bring in, the time consuming process of how are you going to purchase this product, how are you going to stay within your sales to purchase ratios, and to ensure that your overall margin is going to come in where you need. Make sure you don't exceed inventory levels, you don't blow your margin percent or your blended margin. I mean, there's a multitude of things that I'll get into other videos of what these particular things mean. But within that, to be able to plan something on that magnitude and to be able to go and execute it seamlessly and thoughtfully, and to understand that first you have to set expectations. And then once you have those expectations, you can create standards. And that standard is, this is what the execution is going to look like. This is the merchandising style that I'm going to use. Am I using a waterfall element? Is it vertical? Am I doing a horizontal approach? What all that you want to put into that? We're going to put a water element in the middle of, if we're building an outdoor garden center. So there's so much creativity and innovation goes into this, but you have to understand your expectations and your standards, and then you get to the details. The details of this execution and the details of anything is that without the expectations of what it is that you want to accomplish, and without setting clear standards, this is what it should be standardized, look like at all times, then you can't go and then look at the details of it. And then only when you have the foundation of those three, think of it as a triad, and then you can innovate. And many times and too often, another series that I'll get into is why do we all automatically want to go to innovation without doing the research and the work that it takes to truly ensure that we're able to set clear expectations, standards, and details. But if you think of the leadership that it takes to be able to just create all of the things that I've shared so far, and then on top of that, be able to drive and be number one in sales, be number one in net income and economic value added, just crushing financial goals. And having the ability to teach your team how to set their department and completely understand their movement, their categories, their blended margin, the process of this. I'm going to drive sales here, but yet you will be able to convert at a stronger rate. There's all these things that go into this. So there's so much development, so much teaching, so much connection and understanding. And yet I constantly receive feedback with all that ability and all that leadership to be able to create that kind of success and to replicate that success. It isn't being number one for 1 month or 1 year. It's being recognized as the best of the best year after year after year after year after year. And that connection to that automatically would tell me, well, I'm achieving what it is that what I'm supposed to be. If I'm supposed to be the best, here's my measurement. Here's the metrics to go track of whether or not I'm the best. So it was very difficult for me to accept that I needed to continue to grow and learn based on other people's subjective reality. But that subjective reality is very important. The term perception is reality is truly an opinion based on each individual's preference, that they want you to come to them on their own terms, that they choose, that you address them in the way that they want, and you connect with them in the manner in which they want you to connect with them. And this is a very important process and connection when it comes to servant leadership or being selfless. Because it goes so much deeper than, oh, I'm a good person, or I believe when I'm in a conversation, I'm being respectful. You have to know it so much deeper than that. That's why many times as leaders, you can have a group of 10, 20 individuals, and out of that group, 6 or 7 are just completely singing your praises. 2 to 3 don't, they just don't think you get them at all. So this mindset, this trap that I'm laying out right now, is that I'm creating success. My team believes in that success. My team believes in me. They're obviously willing to follow the guidance and the process. And they're immediately seeing and reaping the benefits of those actions and that success. And yet, the feedback that I would receive was indicative as if I wasn't connected with my team at all. Now keep in mind, here's where it's an important element to the story. My particular team, the team that I work directly with, they got to see the real me all the time. I was open, I was transparent with them, and probably subconsciously I was connecting with them personally where they were, meeting them where they're at, and connecting more to their modalities and their personality than what I even knew, because I wasn't trained in it. I didn't understand it, I wasn't conscious of it, so I wasn't able to see what are the directions, why am I doing this, and what does this look like, and really, what is the outcome if I do this particular action, if I'm connecting with this individual in this way. So this was all peer-to-peer communication that was coming back. At the time, I was wanting to see, how do I continue to grow, develop? How do I take on a bigger responsibility within the organization? And how do I help lead in a greater way for the company? And so I was holding myself back. And the reason I was holding myself back is because I had created this success point. And the success point was, if I am the best, if I can achieve all the measurement, the KPIs, the financials, if I can win merchandising contests, if my store looks the best all the time, consistent standards, then that is what you would want to take to the next level of multi-unit leadership. Because essentially, as a multi-unit leader in my mind, I would be taking and explaining to individuals, here's how you create and replicate this same success. So there's truth to that. The point of it that I didn't understand at that time was, while you would want to replicate that success, you would be teaching. And for this example and situation, I would be teaching individuals that own their own process, their own store, their own teams. And I would have to develop them. I wasn't leading them. I would have to develop and mentor them. And I would have to do it through their particular lens, their modality, their personality, their expressive language. And when I would need to be able to connect in a way to get them to see it through their own ways and create their own style, and then be able to go and communicate that and disseminate the information to create and replicate the same type of success. That was a very illuminating thought process for me. Because it was no longer about my own self-independent success. And this is something that I have seen the largest gap when it comes to where do multi-unit leaders make the most mistakes. It is never adapting. It doesn't matter how long they've been in multi-unit leadership. They could be in it 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Continue to elevate. Continue to be promoted. Continue to advance in their career. Because the leader that is promoting them has a certain element of preference and bias behind it. So if you're working with someone that believes financials is the most important thing, if you achieve number one in all financials, you're getting promoted. While you're in that, you continue to achieve financials, you're going to continue to get promoted. And so on and so on. And yet, you've never learned the skill set that is so desperately needed when it comes to people, connection, training, development, process. Maybe product management is not something that you've learned. You got financials down, but do you understand the connecting nature of all the financials? Because there's financials of KPIs. There is financials that are created through an objective process. You can measure individual things, but if you take over a location that's already thriving and you're a single unit leader, then that location's having success in spite of you as the leader. And that can happen very often, and I have seen it hundreds of times in the past 20 years in large corporations. Or, here's the flip side of that. That success is 100% because of that leader. That leader goes in, is able to build the team, teach the team, drive the team, but only to reach the goals or the expectations, whether it's financial, culturally, whatever it is. But in turn, that leader doesn't teach each individual the development process and the skill set to be able to carry on and have sustainability. So as soon as that leader leaves that location falls apart. And this becomes cyclical process. It is this constant cycle of we bring in a leader, they're great at one thing, we focus on that one thing, we grow that one thing, they achieve results in that one thing, and then they get promoted to a multi-unit leadership. And they never develop all the other skills, and most importantly, they do not develop the ability or the knowledge of how to create sustainability. All of this, in reference, is still connecting back to the foundation of what it means to be a true selfless and servant leader. So as an example, just to add an interlude here, so through that time I was able to grow in the example that I gave. I finally was able to move into a multi-unit leadership. And I had an opportunity on a pretty big scale to take on something that had been created out of necessity and innovation without the expectations, the standards, and the details. So we were in a rapid growth process within the company. We were going into locations and areas to do incredible deeds and help and support for the communities that we were going into, but we were going into food deserts. We were also going into lower income areas to where the particular brand that I was with was a little tricky and risky. And many times when you take something that represents a brand in a certain way and you take that to a community and you don't identify and connect with that community, then ultimately you are going to have a lot of issues and a lot of opportunities and challenges that you need to be able to work through. And in this case, in a business that's selling a product, you're going to have a low volume location that's going to lose a lot of money. And that's what we had. So I step into the first location, first big responsibility I've been given in a multi-unit leadership role. And much like any of us, go there, do what you need to do, fix the location, make money, hold the team accountable. And you can read between the lines and what this process would have looked like. Now, I'll get into the details of exactly what I did and how I did it in other videos, as I want to break these down. I want to stay high level, and then I want to create complete applicable nature process if you're listening and you're wanting to understand and learn these particular attributes and tactics to go in and do those things. But if you can't connect with anyone, then those are going to be useless to you. Because the moral of this story isn't that this particular location was runner-up to best execution 2 years later. And that even though it was believed to be that the store team leader was the opportunity and the store team leader actually was able to go and continue to have great success, that the team just wasn't on brand, and yet the team was able to be magnified and celebrated. It wasn't that just that I was able to connect with a culture and be able to rebuild that team and to really create what true process of leadership should look like. But I had to put aside my personal thoughts and feelings about what I wanted to achieve and what I wanted to represent, because I was known to be number one. And I went in and did exact opposite. I went and started focusing on culture versus financials. I went in and rebuilt the team with a store team leader to get them to believe in themselves, to get them to understand what it was that they were up against, being honest, being transparent, but letting them know that I believed in them, and then stood in the gap. At the same time, I wasn't just focused on the one store. I didn't just go do what I was told to do. My direction, what was told to me as a leader, is go there, fix it, hold the team accountable. And what I did was I went there and I rebuilt the team. I rebuilt the foundation. I built the culture. And then I went to the region. The region that is saying this store and this team is not on brand. And I said, you put the wrong brand, the wrong programs, the wrong process, and the wrong store in the wrong place. You can't put a 50,000 square foot store with tons of amenities and food that doesn't connect with the community and the culture. And then put a very underdeveloped leader in a location simply because they were the only leader that was willing to go and expect to have success. You need to right-size models. You can't take a $1 million a week model and set it inside of a $300,000 a week location and expect to not have financial opportunities and challenges. So the program was wrong. The brand was wrong. The offerings were wrong. The categories were wrong. It was systemic. It needed to be fixed at the root and the foundation. And yet, time after leader after leader coming into the space and putting the stress and the pressure on that team, and that team could not ever have achieved the financial results they were being asked to do. It wouldn't have mattered what they did or who they put in there to run that particular store. This is a valuable lesson. Is that if you want to be a selfless leader, you want to be a servant leader, you need to understand each individual. You need to connect with each individual. But more than all of that, you must be an expert to be able to see every variable, every opportunity, every challenge. You have to have the courage. You want to be selfless? Have the courage to put your reputation, your neck, and your job on the line to do what is right. I'm going to take a break, a couple minutes, be right back. All right, I'm back. So I was delivering the point of the information and the knowledge. So step number 1, just because you have achieved certain level of success yourself does not mean that you are a leader. What it means is that you are able to strategize, to execute, and to be able to create results. That is great. That's the start. Without step 1, you can't even talk about step 2. Step 2. Then, how do you have knowledge transfer? There is an art to being able to transfer knowledge from one individual to the next. You have to connect with that person. You have to know what their particular expressive language is. So from a modality standpoint, we understand modalities in a lot of different ways, a visual, kinesthetic, and auditory, that it connects to how you learn. True to a certain extent. But it goes so much deeper than that. There's new research and new study that actually explains, not even in those 3 particular categories, but the unique nature of each human. That you can't even categorize or put humans in a box. But each one of us has our own way of sitting, of standing, connection, distance that we feel comfortable in conversation. The way that we take in information, the way that we express information back out. So much of this, as a leader, is vital to creating the success to be able to engage and connect with individuals. So in the first example that I gave, I talked about all the creative success that I personally had. I created that success. I achieved everything that you would think you would need to get promoted. But I was in a culture to where you don't get promotion so you can make more money or have title. I've never cared about titles. What I wanted to do was go teach and impact. I wanted to create more value in the company. I wanted to help leaders that I seen struggling in other locations. And I knew I could help them. But just because I had the knowledge to go help them didn't mean I had the skill set or ability to connect with them as a person, to even be able to transfer the knowledge that they would need to replicate the success that I had created. So I was given a tremendous amount of feedback about certain things that I needed to change in myself. So I would ask, okay, give me that feedback. What does that look like? What do I need to do different? And there wasn't anything. There wasn't any concrete, you need to do this, or you need to quit saying this, or you need to quit coming across in this way. Or I'm an extreme introvert. So for me, if I go to a business meeting at that time and I'm sitting in a group of my peers, they're my peers. I have the highest and utmost respect for each and every one of them. We would be given 10 things to go do. Go drive revenue this way, drive margin this way, improve your planning process this way. We need to focus on categories here. We need to leverage out 10, 15% in labor this year. We're going to reduce capital expenditure by 25, 30%. Here's all the processes. We need you to send us all these details, systems, tools, and objectives by this time frame. Okay, in my mind, check, done. None of that's difficult. Very, very simple, basic things you would do any given day. So I just assumed all my peers thought that way. And what I truly didn't take in or understand is that that was extremely overwhelming for them. So I received feedback from a leader one time and said, Mike, you need to talk more in these meetings. I'm from the belief at that time, I have since matured, that why would I speak when I don't have any questions? Why would I say something just to say something? It wouldn't share or have any value. But I was thinking from the point of view of, well, I don't have a question. You said go do these 10 things. I know exactly how to do those 10 things. And so I'm good. The point was, though, is that from a peer-to-peer communication, it's always going to be heard in a far greater and easier way than when the leader that is directly over you, direct support, gives you that information. And the leader explained to me, I don't need you to ask questions that I already know you know the answers to. I need you to ask questions that you know the rest of the group are going to have troubles and challenges and obstacles that could be created. That was an aha moment for me. And from that point forward, I wanted to understand my peers more. I wanted to open up and start connecting and asking, where is it that you're struggling? Keep in mind, my whole desire to be able to continue to grow as a leader was so that I could go help. And this leader, my leader, was trying to give me the outlet and the ability to do that, but also doing it in a way that was applicable to teaching me how to transfer knowledge without having the barrier between them that they reported to me. So it was great practice. And what I learned was when I hear 10 things to go do and I go do that, they're trying to figure out how they get 1 to 2 of them done. And that hit me hard because literally I just assumed everyone is able to understand how you're going to drive your sales, how it connects directly into your overall financial success, how that you would merchandise and how you set your overall store based on where you want to do focal points and where you're going to do pallet drops and what your end cap strategy is going to be, how you're going to go after this, how you're going to execute your marketing strategy. What is your customer service going to look like every single day? How are you going to plan this out every single month and every single quarter? How are you going to measure it? How are you going to follow up to ensure execution? How do these things get done? At the same time, you're going to reduce labor 20-25%. I just believe they knew that, okay, if I'm growing revenue at 10%, I don't have to hire anyone, and I can look for efficiencies, and I grow my overall sales per labor hour, and I'm going to be able to gain perspective in this and this. And so all these things, just to me, they just connect instantly. Wasn't a connecting point for them. And what I would see from this was that their own anxiety and stress then leads over and bleeds over into their team. Also, I was able to see that the constant drive and push that I was doing with my team was also putting stress and anxiety on them. So I could see it from a multi-purposeful positioning of what was going on. So that type of ability to look in the middle of every single situation, process how these things are going on, and where are you leaving people behind, was an important lesson. But it taught me how to communicate, how to slow down, so that by the time I got to the example that I shared of the first time that I took on a major multi-unit program, this objective to go in and change this, I was prepared. That I didn't just walk in and say, you do these 10 things. I fixed one thing with the team and the location, and it started with people. And it was 100% to get them to believe in themselves and know I was there for them, nothing else. Then I stood in the gap. The one thing I did for the program was to say, we need to re-merchandise and re-strategize this entire location. And I showed through the unit economics there is no way to ever make money in this location. So I immediately said, I put my reputation on the line right now, even though I didn't even have a reputation. I put it on the line right now. If you sent me here to fix this place, allow me to do it. But the time frame is not going to be a month. I will show incremental growth and improvement. But we need to build the culture. And most importantly, we need to change the program and the model that was put into this location. When you take that kind of stance as a leader, you must have yourself prepared. Because had I gone in and said that and then did not have the information or the experience or expertise to do what I said I was going to do, I not only would have put myself in jeopardy, far more important, I would have put that entire team in jeopardy. So, number one of understanding an example of what it means to be a servant leader is multifaceted. Number one in that process, so step one, we'll just call it A for simplicity. So step one, A, be an expert in your field. Number one, step B, understand how to create knowledge transfer. Number one, step C, ensure that you actually can do what you say you're going to do, and then go do it. Number one. Number two, and I'm only covering two things in this podcast. Number two of being a servant leader is continual self-growth. If you want to be relevant as a leader, then you must create something within yourself that is so inspiring that others want to follow you and they believe in you. But it comes through selflessness in your own life. It is a constant search and hunger to learn more. You grow and you develop in your knowledge. You grow and you develop in your expertise. You grow and you develop in your communication skills, which means you listen and speak less. You grow in your maturation as a leader. You solicit, you crave, and you create immediate action when you receive feedback. And this is a powerful one. Leaders like to say, well, I ask all the time. I ask my team. I ask for feedback. I ask for this. What would you do different? Or how would you do this? You haven't created a space where your team trust that you will actually listen to them. So how do you do that? Someone gives you feedback. They see immediate action and change, regardless if you agree with it or not. If they see immediate adjustment, action, change, you start to develop trust. That is the start of step 2. Understanding what your team is going through. They're never going to understand the big picture of what it is that you're up against. You create a massive vision. You have an incredible strategy. You can see that it's right in front of you, but it might take 2-3 years. And your team can hear the different types of steps that are going to take place in your timeline. So let's just say that you're going to say, we're going to grow from $5 million a year to $10 million a year. Here's our objectives. We're improving product management, which is going to be able to drive new influx, new flow, and here's the promo strategy that goes with that. Number 2 objective. We are rebranding a social presence that's going to create an omni-channel and e-commerce direction that's going to lead to additional revenue growth within those particular categories. And then the third is that we have identified our bottom 30, bottom 40% of categories or items, whatever it may be. And you're going to work through those and you're going to generate new additional exposure and marketing process, or you're going to have selling events or theater or whatever it is that you want to pop up within your particular space, whether you're in a product, standard, retail, food and beverage, restaurant, whatever it is, any type of product industry, this all equates and works within that. You lay all that out. Seems very, very simple to you. You have it in your objectives. You have it in your measurables. You know how you're going to deliver it. You've flown through your KPIs. It's fail-proof. Sharing that type of information with your team a lot of times is going to be extremely overwhelming. As a leader, you just laid out 3 things. It's just 3 things. We're going to focus on 3 things. What they heard was you're going to focus on 50 things. Because in their mind, they're like, well, I got marketing in 3 different areas now. I got from a subject matter expert standpoint, I now have to look at product management in 3 completely different categories. Then I have to go track the financials, and then I have to get with this person. And so they start creating in their mind, well, I have to meet with a person on this, and I have to connect on this, and I have to go, because the knowledge transfer isn't there. So deductive reasoning is very important in this scenario. And reverse engineering the process to simplify the approach. This is where asking your team for feedback and building the trust, because what you need your team to say is, I do not know what you're talking about. Can you explain how that creating new products or innovations or being able to look at our bottom 30-40% and creating an action out of that or social presence is going to drive an additional $5 million? I don't understand that. How would you approach getting teams together? How would you advise making sure that everyone is on the same page and that we're measuring off of this? When do we connect to check to ensure that we are going on the right path and that we can bring things in front of you as the leader and course correct and focus on this? None of these things can you hand to a team and then expect it to come back, because the actions that happen, you send your team down a path, you expect them to start reaching certain timelines and points, and you want the measurement and the success to be there. And if it isn't there in a short time period based on what you're wanting to see, you immediately step in, you take completely over, and then you start to micromanage your team. And then when you say, well, I'm asking for feedback, the team is going to receive that as, no, you just want us to tell you what you want to hear, and you're going to tell us how to do it anyway. So why don't you just tell us what you want us to go do? Now you've created this process to where not only does your team not trust you to give you feedback, they also shut down and they quit thinking critically about the steps and the actions in which they can go do their job. So it becomes a very reactive and transactional process with your team versus empowering, creating autonomy, and being transformational in your communication. I hope this helps. The 2 steps I walk through in this leadership series. What this would look like moving forward, when I don't have guests, I would definitely be able to create either a business specific and go into great detail around economics or product management or those particular things. And then during the leadership series will be more philosophical and applicable in the nature in which we all as leaders deal with every single day and always have to strive to continue to get better. So again, thank you for listening, or if you're watching on YouTube, appreciate all the connective, all the courage that it takes to be a leader, the day in and day grind. Many times that we, as leaders, we are psychologists, we are mentors, we're supporters, we're therapists. It is a thankless and endless responsibility. But ultimately, the reward that we have from a leadership standpoint is that you get to see people continue to thrive and continue to grow. And that's what drives you as a person. That's what drives you as a selfless leader. That's what drives you as a servant leader. So again, thank you. This is Hybrid Ops. Appreciate it.